Good morning and welcome to this next installment on creating Earth-based biological solutions for a world in dire need of regeneration and renewal. Finding myself back here in the rainforest, I'm surrounded by a bounty of life, and a bounty of life of which is the open source template from which we as human beings can observe directly and learn from in order to emulate, create, and reproduce our own sustainable, renewable, and much more meaningful and happy societies outside of this beautiful forest realm. In my last video, I documented how the life-giving properties of the soil are essential for us to understand so that we may nourish it, as to keep the living source of all life possible for all to experience and to continue seeing everything around us that is good and green grow from this basis of life. In this episode, I'd like to talk about photosynthesis and why photosynthesis is essential for us to understand and to harness as a magical system of nature so that outside the forest we can create energy independence by biologically sourcing our fuels and producing them to take down the Oilygarchy that run and manipulate our country and our lives. Basically, what I have here is a clipping of a cedar branch, and this is Mother Nature's biological template for a modern solar panel. Everything that is living and breathing and vibrant and green around us is the product of chlorophyll. And chlorophyll is the living, active green pigment inside individual cells called chloroplasts. And these chloroplasts are much like the fuel cells on a modern solar panel. They're collecting, gathering, and absorbing solar light energy from the sun and fueling the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which a plant takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and water from the soil to synthesize its own food in the form of glucose. Nature is a glucose-based economy. Now, what's really cool about photosynthesis is that while it's producing food, these plants and trees are producing food for themselves, they're also giving us oxygen while exuding enzymes through the roots to feed the life in the soil. Now, if we understand the importance of this, this is awesome because this is keeping our ecosystems intact. But what we don't really realize about glucose is that there's some profound implications to this. Using our ancient art of fermentation, we can use organic matter full of glucose and these carbohydrates and sugars to break them down using yeast and turn them into alcohol. Many of us are very familiar with alcohol and its many benefits, but I'd like to say that maybe we're not so familiar with its benefit of being a potential fuel that can take down the fossil fuel industries. Now, alcohol has its roots as a fuel in prohibition, in which the Rockefeller Foundation and the oil corporations lobbied Congress to pass a law making alcohol illegal as to secure a monopoly on the energy at that time, because alcohol was competing with fossil fuels as a way of powering automobiles and machinery at the time. Well, ever since we've been energy slaves to these oil corporations, which have grown bigger and bigger and now comprise the Oilygarchy, of which we need to become free from. And I suggest that alcohol can help us do that. Now, what's really cool about creating and producing alcohol as a renewable fuel source is that we can grow it in permacultural and organic farming systems which foster biodiversity and grow biomass by harnessing the infinite power of the sun, taking out carbon dioxide out of our overburdened atmosphere while building the soil and giving us the basic components to break it down using living life forms of yeast to make alcohol, of which can replace fossil fuels in a number of ways, including our cooking fuels, to be able to heat our homes, to be able to use in automobiles and machinery. Though perhaps a lot of this is to get back to a slower way of life and to move away from machinery and automobiles, and to be able to connect with each other again on a much more human level and to stick our hands into the soil. But nonetheless, alcohol can take the place of fossil fuel, no problem. What's great about this permacultural system is that it's a living system. It fosters life. It fosters our ability to become self-sufficient and produce our own fuel and become givers and give back to the earth while producing something for ourselves. Alcohol is a carbon neutral or carbon negative fuel, which means it's taking more out of the atmosphere than what's being emitted back when it burns. And on the contrary, fossil fuels are extracting from the earth dead fuels from distant geologic times and emitting these directly into the atmosphere, overburdening our atmosphere and giving us our present predicament of catastrophic climate change and the sixth mass extinction, in which 200 species presently are going extinct every day due to habitat loss, ecological and climatic conditions that are deteriorating and creating inhospitable conditions for all kinds of species and life systems themselves. So I suggest turning our attention to a living system rather than a dead system. Let's make fossil fuels and the oligarchs who control our lives through energy obsolete. If you don't like pipelines, if you don't like wars for oil, if you don't like coal trains and offshore drilling and fracking and all those radioactive chemicals that are being injected into the earth to extract this finite resource, to keep this industrial planet-wrecking system going on a little bit longer, then let's create a living biological system. And let's do that by creating alcohol. What we can do to make this a sustainable system as opposed to the industrial system of biofuel production is to decentralize it and to grow it in permacultural systems where there's biodiversity and no fossil fuels being used as inputs, neither in fertilizers, nor in pesticides, nor in tractor use, because we can do this all by hand. On the contrary, modern biofuel production is energy intensive. They are pouring more energy into producing ethanol than what they're getting out of it. And we, as taxpayers, are subsidizing that. We are subsidizing the fossil fuel industry to basically make a terrible system keep working. We are subsidizing fossil fuels to be poured into this system of growing corn, which is genetically modified, which requires tons of fertilizers and pesticides, and which is destroying the health and balance of the planet to produce a little bit of ethanol to make our gasoline at the gas pumps 10% ethanol. I mean, this is ridiculous. Let's instead subsidize and support systems which require hardly any energy investment, and instead we get pure energy that is combustible and efficient in return, that is also healing our planet. So this is my proposition. I'd like to do this on one independent hub here on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. But really what we need to do is create kind of a community-supported energy is the way I see it. Instead of community-supported agriculture, where a farm grows organic food and provides for its subscribers, we need to be doing the same thing, growing biomass and fermenting it down into combustible alcohol so that the community can invest in a community-supported energy grid. So we can be producing energy, others can be producing food, and we can actually mix these systems and produce both at once. If we decentralize it, we don't have to use oil for transportation nor in tractors. We'll have a lot more jobs and opportunities for people to be involved and have their hands in the soil and to be connecting in community. And we don't need fertilizers or pesticides because we'll be harnessing biodiversity and natural pest control and natural fertility means. So there is nothing that can go wrong here. I just say let's come together and make this happen. Please check out my project. But more so, please help this make this happen on a massive scale. Let's come together. We need to become givers toward the earth, to give back and to heal our planet, rather than to continue taking from it and extracting and powering a civilization that's no longer suitable for us. No matter what we are talking about, I think a lot of this biofuel discussion comes down to whether we can power an industrial civilization. But we shouldn't be looking at it like that anymore. Let's just look at it like the necessity of our lives is to downscale, to simplify and localize, so that this civilization can become obsolete and that we can become a part of a living system again. So thank you for checking this out. Thank you for listening to me, and I really hope we can make something happen together, and I'll have more videos soon. Thank you.